Which otter would win in a wild face-off, the tool-wielding sea otter or the Amazon's fierce river titan, the giant otter? Welcome to the ultimate otter showdown, where the Pacific's fluffiest marine acrobat meets South America's loudest and boldest river predator. These two cousins may share the same family tree, but trust me, they're as different as a cozy beach bonfire and a roaring jungle thunderstorm. Let's start with the sea otter. Picture a furry little genius floating on its back, cracking open a sea urchin with a rock like it's opening a bag of chips. That's not just adorable, it's innovation in action. As a wildlife expert, I've watched sea otters off the coast of California twist through kelp forests like underwater ballerinas. They're soft, sleek, and seriously clever. Now, swing over to the Amazon and meet the giant otter, a 2-meter-long, fish-crushing powerhouse with a voice that could wake the rainforest. These guys don't mess around. I've seen them patrol their territory like an elite river patrol squad, barking warnings and taking down fish faster than you can say piranha. So here's the big question. In a battle of brains versus brawn, who really rules the water? Let's dive deeper into their size, skills, and survival strategies to find out. This won't be your average nature documentary, it's otter warfare, and it's about to get wild. Who would win in a showdown between the fluffiest tool user of the Pacific and the loudest, most coordinated predator of the Amazon? Let's meet our contenders. First up, we've got the sea otter, a floating furball that's as clever as it is cute. These marine mammals call the chilly coastal waters of the North Pacific home, from Alaska down to California. Imagine a creature so fluffy that it has the densest fur in the entire animal kingdom, up to 1,000,000 hairs per square inch. That's like wearing 1,000 winter coats at once. And they're not just pretty faces. I once watched a sea otter off the coast of Monterey crack open a clam using a rocket balanced on its belly like a dinner plate. That's right, this little genius brings tools to the dinner table. Now, let's head south to the steamy rivers of the Amazon and Pantanal wetlands, where the giant otter rules with size, speed, and serious teamwork. These aren't your average river otters. We're talking about 6-foot-long, sleek-bodied, fish-hunting machines that can outswim and outsmart just about anything in their watery domain. They don't hunt alone either. Giant otters roll deep in family packs that work together like a well-oiled Navy SEAL unit. And when they speak, you'll know it. Their high-pitched calls, barks, and screams echo through the rainforest like a jungle chorus gone wild. I've had the surreal experience of hearing a group of giant otters alert each other to danger while cruising down a tributary in the Amazon. It sounded like a mix between a monkey, a bird, and a squeaky toy in panic mode. So here's the question: if you pit one of nature's smartest solo survivors against a social predator with strength in numbers, who comes out on top? Is brainy better than brawny, or does teamwork trump cleverness? Stick with me, because this otter tale is just getting started. What happens when you put a fuzzy-faced marine floater next to a sleek Amazonian river beast? Let's talk size, style, and that all-important first impression. Starting with the sea otter, this little ocean engineer might look like a plush toy come to life, but don't let the cuteness fool you. Measuring about 4 to 5 feet long and weighing in at 45 to 100 pounds, sea otters are smallish by predator standards but perfectly built for life in the cold Pacific. Their most iconic feature, the fur. And we're not talking about any ordinary fur. This is the warmest, thickest coat in the entire animal kingdom. We're talking around 1,000,000 hairs per square inch. That's more than you have on your entire body, multiplied hundreds of times. I once had the chance to examine a sea otter pelt during a research project, and let me tell you, it felt like touching the fluffiest, silkiest pillow you've ever imagined. Their fur is so good at trapping heat that they don't need a layer of blubber like seals do. They literally wear their insulation. Now meet the giant otter. The name doesn't lie. Giant otters have broad heads with a serious don't mess with me vibe and a very cool personal signature. Each one has a unique white patch on its throat, almost like nature gave them personalized jerseys. Researchers can identify individuals just by looking at that throat marking, like name tags in an otter conference. So now I've got to ask you, if you had to pick a teammate for an underwater obstacle course, would you choose the thick-coated, floating fluffball with brains, or the lean, fast river athlete with family pride tattooed on its chest? Keep that thought bubbling, because the matchup is only getting more interesting. What do the icy shores of Alaska and the steamy rivers of South America have in common? Otters, of course, but not just any otters. These two cousins have carved out completely different corners of the world to call home, and their lifestyles couldn't be more opposite. Let's start with the sea otter, the cozy coastal connoisseur of the North Pacific. These guys are basically the beach bums of the otter world. You'll find them drifting along the rocky shores of Russia, Alaska, British Columbia, and California, wrapped up in kelp like nature's own burritos. And I mean that literally. Sea otters actually anchor themselves with giant strands of kelp so they don't float away while taking a nap. That's the equivalent of tying your sleeping bag to a tree while camping. Adorable and clever. They're true ocean lovers. Sea otters rarely come ashore. Instead, they spend most of their lives bobbing on the waves, diving for seafood, grooming that luxurious fur, and occasionally climbing onto rocks for a little sunbathing. I once saw a whole raft of them near Monterey Bay, just chilling in the surf with pups resting on their bellies like tiny, furry life jackets. It was the definition of coastal vibe. Now switch scenes completely and dive deep into the lush, tangled world of the Amazon River Basin, where the giant otter reigns. These animals don't do cold. They thrive in South America's tropical rivers, swamps, and flooded forests, especially in places like Brazil's Pantanal wetlands. Their habitat is a watery jungle playground, full of twists and turns, perfect for sneaky ambushes and high-speed pursuits. This isn't a lazy float in the bay, it's a wild, unpredictable ecosystem teeming with caimans, anacondas, and piranhas. Giant otters don't just hang out in the water. They dig dens into the riverbanks, complete with multiple entrances and sandy chambers to raise their pups. Think of it as real estate with waterfront views. I've seen these dens firsthand during expeditions in the Amazon, and let me tell you, they are built with the same care and precision as a suburban cul-de-sac. Only wetter, muddier, and with more fish bones. So here's a question for you. If you had to pick a dream home, would you choose a floating kelp bed in the cold Pacific or a riverbank hideaway deep in the Amazon jungle? The sea otter and giant otter made their choices long ago, and their homes shape everything about how they live, hunt, and survive. Let's keep exploring what makes these habitats and these otters so wildly different. What do a rock, a sea urchin, and a pack of piranha hunters have in common? Otters, of course. But not just any otters, two of the most fascinating and food-obsessed predators in the animal kingdom. Let's start with the sea otter, a true culinary craftsman of the Pacific. If there were an underwater version of MasterChef, this little furball would win the title for creativity. Sea otters have a diet that reads like a seafood platter at a fancy coastal restaurant. Clams, mussels, crabs, sea urchins, and the occasional fish if they're feeling spicy. But here's the wild part: they don't just munch on their food. They use tools to prepare it. I've personally watched sea otters dive for shellfish, then float on their backs while using a carefully chosen rock to crack open the shell, just like someone popping open a cold soda on a summer day. They even store their favorite tools in loose skin flaps under their armpits. Yes, sea otters have pockets. How's that for mealtime innovation? Now shift your attention to the giant otter, and the tone changes fast. This isn't a dainty dinner, it's a high-speed, team-coordinated fishing frenzy. Giant otters are the apex predators of South America's rivers, and fish are their main target, especially catfish and even piranhas. That's right, these otters routinely chow down on one of the Amazon's most feared fish. But they don't do it solo. These animals hunt as a family unit, like a synchronized swimming squad with teeth. I once watched a group of 6 giant otters herd a school of fish into a tight pocket of river, blocking every escape route before diving in one by one to snatch their prey. It was like watching a pack of wolves working underwater. Sea otters may dine alone with finesse, but giant otters bring the heat with coordinated chaos. One uses brains and tools, the other uses strategy and numbers. So here's the big question: which would you rather watch at dinner time, the lone genius cracking crabs on its chest, or the jungle gang bringing down a school of piranhas like a well-drilled sports team? Either way, grab your popcorn, because when these otters eat, it's dinner and a show. What happens when you give one otter a quiet kelp hammock and the other a rowdy family reunion in the jungle? You get two very different lifestyles, both wildly fascinating in their own ways. Let's begin with the sea otter, nature's solo artist. These marine mammals are the introverts of the otter world. They often prefer a life of peace and solitude, or sometimes hang out in small, relaxed groups called rafts. Picture this: A sea otter floating on its back, belly up, gently bobbing with the waves while snacking on a crab. Sounds peaceful, right? Now imagine it has wrapped itself in a blanket of kelp to keep from drifting away while napping. Yes, they literally tuck themselves in at night using seaweed. I once spent a foggy morning off the coast of Alaska watching a mother sea otter rocking her pup on her belly like a cradle, both wrapped in kelp like sushi. It was pure serenity. Sea otters communicate with soft coos, squeaks, and chirps, but they're not exactly party animals. They like their space, keep to themselves, and enjoy the little things in life like grooming their fur and floating in the sunshine. They're the laid-back loners of the sea, and honestly, I respect that energy. Now let's take a sharp turn to the giant otter, the loud, proud, and social powerhouse of South America's rivers. These otters don't do anything quietly. They live in large, tight-knit family groups of 5 to 10 individuals. And when I say family, I mean it. Parents, siblings, and sometimes even aunts and uncles all work together to hunt, raise pups, and defend their turf. And speaking of turf, giant otters are extremely territorial. They will patrol their stretch of river like furry riverbank bouncers, warning off intruders with a chorus of high-pitched screams, whistles, and growls. Seriously, their vocal range rivals a boy band. I once heard a group from 100 yards away before I even saw them. It sounded like a jungle concert with no tickets required. Their behavior is all about cooperation. They groom each other, play together, hunt in teams, and even babysit one another's pups. If sea otters are the quiet philosophers, giant otters are the noisy neighbors who throw the best block parties and invite the whole family. So here's a fun thought. If you were an otter, would you choose the calm, solo floating life with kelp blankets and peaceful naps? Or would you dive into the fast-paced, vocal, team-powered world of the Amazon's river rulers? One is chill and clever, the other is bold and bonded. Both are brilliant in their own way, but which lifestyle would suit you best? Let's keep exploring. What happens when brains meet brawn in the animal kingdom? And if two very different otters faced off, who would win, a jungle powerhouse or a floating genius with a rock? Let's set the stage. In one corner, you've got the giant otter, long, lean, and absolutely fearless. These Amazon heavyweights are the bruisers of the otter world. They can grow up to 6 feet long, live in a highly coordinated family unit, and are not afraid of a fight. I've seen footage of them chasing off caimans, yes, actual crocodilians, and doing it like it's just another Tuesday. With their strength, teamwork, and intense territorial instincts, giant otters are the kind of animals that show up to a river party and immediately take control of the snacks, the playlist, and the best sunbathing log. Then in the other corner, we've got the sea otter, smaller, but every bit as impressive. This isn't your average cute fluff ball floating on its back. Sea otters are strategists. They may not be built for battle, but they've mastered the art of survival. They use tools, adapt to freezing waters, and avoid conflict with the kind of finesse that would make a martial artist proud. I've watched one crack open a clam on its belly using a rock, completely unfazed by a nearby bald eagle. Cool under pressure, totally focused, no drama. These are the MacGyvers of the ocean. So, let's imagine the hypothetical showdown. In a one-on-one, land meets sea kind of scenario, giant otter likely takes the upper paw. Bigger muscles, sharper teeth, and a temperament that says don't mess with me. They've got the aggression and the pack mentality to overwhelm most threats. But here's where it gets interesting. The sea otter might not engage at all. Instead, it would find a clever way to escape, outthink its opponent, or just wait for the tide to turn in its favor, literally. It's a master of staying alive in icy, dangerous waters where few other mammals dare to live. And that, to me, is a kind of strength that's just as powerful as brute force. So here's the big question. Would you bet on the brawler who dominates the rivers of the Amazon, or the survivalist genius floating peacefully along the Pacific coast? One's a warrior, the other's a wizard. The real answer might depend on the battlefield, but one thing's for sure when it comes to otters: never judge by the fur. Love otters as much as we do. If you enjoyed this wild showdown between the sea otter and the giant otter, don't just float away quietly. Drop a comment and tell us, are you Team Sea Otter or Team Giant Otter? Subscribe for more epic animal battles, wild facts, and nature stories you won't hear anywhere else. And hey, your support helps us keep the wild fun coming. Let's make some noise louder than a giant otter's jungle call. Like, comment, and subscribe today.